Why did no one look her in the eye that morning? She noticed it the moment she walked into the briefing hall. A row of men, some younger, some her age, shuffled papers, stared at screens, but not one lifted their gaze to acknowledge her presence. Only the sound of boots shifting, chairs scraping against the floor. Captain Elena Ramirez sat straighter, willing herself not to flinch. She had worn this uniform for 12 years, earned her place as a combat pilot, a sniper, an officer. And yet, here she was again, reduced to whispers that stopped when she entered, to silence that cut sharper than any insult. But that wasn't what gnawed at her. It wasn't the cold shoulders or the subtle disdain. It was what she'd heard 2 nights before in the barracks, muffled cries behind a locked door. A young private begging someone to stop, a voice like iron telling him to take it like a soldier. And then silence. She hadn't slept since. The colonel entered last, Victor Harrington. His shadow filled the hall before his frame did. Tall, immaculately pressed uniform, silver at his temples, a jaw that seemed carved from steel. His reputation was legend, but not for honor, ruthless efficiency, political connections. A man whose loyalty was not to the soldiers he commanded, but to the image he projected. He didn't look at her either, not directly. But when his gaze swept across the room, lingering for just a second too long, she felt it, like ice across her skin. And then, as if to confirm her unease, he smiled. Not warm, not human, a smile that said, "I see you, and I'll break you too." The briefing droned on, training schedules, deployment rotations. A new program he was spearheading, advanced warrior integration. The words rolled off his tongue like progress, like innovation. But Elena knew better. She'd read enough reports, seen enough broken men shipped home with suicide stamped on their files to recognize the pattern. This was Sparta reborn, a system designed not to strengthen but to strip, to grind away conscience until nothing remained but obedience. Her stomach tightened when Harrington said the words acceptable civilian casualties. He said it like one might say acceptable weather delays. And the room didn't flinch. Not one officer spoke up. Not one soldier dared to shift in their seat. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. She rose when dismissed, her chair legs dragging against the floor louder than she intended. Harrington's gaze flicked toward her again, a glint of amusement in his eyes, as if her discomfort was a performance he had orchestrated. Outside, the air felt too thin. She pulled in a breath, grounding herself. She lived through deployments in Afghanistan, Iraq, classified assignments that had bent her will but never broken it. She'd seen comrades fall, had blood on her own hands, but nothing had felt as corrosive as the silence inside that hall. It was in that silence she remembered Ryan Cooper. She met him months earlier, fresh-faced, still carrying the naive pride of a new soldier. He reminded her of herself when she first wore the uniform, sharp, determined, hopeful. He used to ask her endless questions. What was it like in combat? How do you keep the nightmares away? Do you ever stop hearing the screams? She never sugar-coated her answers. He respected that. She thought it made him stronger. But last week he stopped asking questions. He stopped talking altogether. And now he was gone. Officially suicide, unofficially, the whispers said otherwise. Elena had seen the signs, the hollow eyes, the tremors in his hands, the desperate way he'd once grabbed her arm in the mess hall, whispering, "They're inside my head, ma'am. I don't know what's mine anymore." She wanted to press him, to demand he explain, but Harrington's aide had appeared like a shadow, steering Ryan away with a grip too tight on his shoulder. That was the last time she saw him alive. And now his death was being filed away like paperwork. Another statistic, another soldier who couldn't handle it. Her jaw clenched as she walked toward the barracks. The corridors smelled faintly of bleach, the kind that never fully covered the scent of fear. Soldiers passed her without greeting. Some looked haunted, others blank. A few whispered as she passed, but never loud enough for her to hear. She stopped at the wall where the memorial photographs hung. Young faces in uniform. Smiling, proud. Ryan's picture was already there. freshly framed, his eyes bright in the photo, betraying none of the torment that had consumed him. She touched the frame lightly, whispering to herself, "You deserved better." That night sleep didn't come. She sat at her desk, the low hum of the base generator filling the silence. Her hands shook as she read Ryan's final letter again. He slipped it under her door, though she hadn't realized until after he was gone. The handwriting was hurried, words uneven. "Ma'am, if you're reading this, it means something happened. The colonel calls it mental fortification, says it'll make us stronger, but it doesn't feel like training. It feels like they're rewriting us. I can't tell what's real anymore. Don't let them bury me as weak. Tell my dad I fought. Tell him I knew something was wrong." Her throat closed. She set the letter down, gripping the edge of the desk until her knuckles whitened. She could walk away, pretend she never saw the signs, pretend Ryan was just another soldier lost to the shadows of war. That's what they wanted: silence, compliance. But she remembered her father's words before he shipped out to his last deployment. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Elena closed her eyes. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Harrington summoned her. His office was immaculate. Books lined the shelves, military commendations gleamed on the walls, but it felt less like a place of honor and more like a courtroom where he judged every soul that entered. "Captain Ramirez," he said smoothly, motioning for her to sit. She remained standing. His eyebrow arched at the defiance, but his smile didn't falter. "I hear you were close to Specialist Cooper." Her jaw tightened. "He was a soldier under my watch." "A soldier who took his own life," Harrington said flatly. "Tragic, but not uncommon. War demands sacrifices." "That wasn't war," she said quietly. "That was something else." His eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. "Careful, Captain. You tread close to insubordination." She met his gaze, steady, unblinking. "With respect, sir, someone needs to ask why 3 men have died in the last 2 months under your program." The silence stretched. Then slowly Harrington stood, walking around the desk until he was inches from her. His cologne was sharp, metallic. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "Do you know what separates the strong from the weak, Captain?" His voice was almost a whisper. "The strong adapt, the weak resist. Cooper resisted, and resistance is a kind of cowardice." Her fists curled at her sides, nails biting into her palms. He straightened, smiling once more as if nothing had passed between them. "Dismissed." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "And Ramirez," she looked back. His eyes were steel. "Don't make the same mistake he did." She walked out, pulse pounding, every step heavier than the last. That night she stood by the training fields. The lights from the barracks glowed in the distance, but here, the darkness felt absolute. She thought of Ryan's words, of Harrington's threat, of the silence that swallowed every protest on this base. The question wasn't whether she'd act. The question was how. And in that stillness, under the heavy weight of a sky that felt like judgment itself, Elena made her choice. She would expose him, even if it destroyed her. Why was the gate guard stalling? Elena held her ID out, watching the young private's hands tremble as he scanned it. Normally, base security was routine: swipe, glance, wave through. But tonight he kept glancing at the monitor, then at her, as if reading something he wasn't supposed to share. "Problem, Private?" she asked, her tone level but carrying the edge of command. He swallowed hard. "No, ma'am, just a delay in the system." His eyes flicked toward the guard shack window. She followed the glance, saw the faint silhouette of another officer inside, talking on a phone. Her chest tightened. They knew she was moving. Finally the screen beeped. The private handed her the card back, muttering, "You're cleared, ma'am." Elena drove through slowly, keeping her face expressionless though her pulse hammered. She didn't like this. Not the delay. Not the whispers. Not the fact that Harrington had called her into his office yesterday just to remind her, wordlessly, that he was watching. She pulled into the lot near the motor pool, killing the engine. For a moment she just sat there, staring at her reflection in the windshield. Dark hair pulled tight, fatigue lines around her eyes. She looked older than her 34 years. Older and tired. But tired didn't matter now. Ryan's letter was tucked in her jacket. The only piece of truth she had, but it wasn't enough. Not against Harrington. Not against the system that would bury this like they buried every soldier who broke under the weight of it. She needed evidence. Something undeniable. And she had an idea where to start. Dr. James Chen. She met him briefly months ago, back when he still wore the uniform. A military physician, meticulous, quiet, with a reputation for caring about soldiers more than protocols. Word was, he'd been forced into early retirement after questioning the suicide rates. If anyone had seen the cracks in Harrington's program, it was Chen. She parked 3 blocks from his Minneapolis apartment, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold. The building was modest, brick worn down by years of winters. The buzzer at the door didn't work, so she slipped in behind a delivery driver, moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd been trained to enter places unnoticed. 3rd floor, 3B. She knocked softly. Footsteps shuffled inside, then the door opened a crack. A tired face peered out. Recognition flickered. "Captain Ramirez," Chen said cautiously, "you shouldn't be here." "I know," she replied, "but I need answers." For a long moment he just looked at her. His eyes were wary, calculating. Finally he opened the door wider. "Come in." The apartment was sparse, books stacked neatly on shelves, medical texts alongside military histories. No television, no photographs, just order, as if chaos was something he couldn't allow inside anymore. He motioned for her to sit at the small table. He poured tea into mismatched cups, setting one before her. His hands shook slightly, though whether from age, nerves, or something else, she couldn't tell. "You're not the first to come asking," he said quietly, "but you might be the last." Her heart beat faster. "Ryan Cooper." Chen's eyes darkened. "I know. They're saying suicide, but it wasn't, was it?" He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Depends on what you call suicide. His body gave up by his own hand, yes, but his mind was not his own anymore." Elena swallowed hard. "What did they do to him?" Chen hesitated. For a long time the only sound was the tick of the cheap wall clock. Then finally he stood, crossing to the bookshelf. He pressed on a panel, it clicked open, revealing a small hidden compartment. From it he pulled a flash drive. He set it on the table between them. "This," he said, "medical records, reports I filed. 17 suicides in 18 months, all from units under Harrington's oversight, all involved in his so-called Advanced Warrior Integration Program." Elena's hand hovered above the drive, but she didn't take it yet. "Why give this to me?" Chen's eyes met hers, steady now. "Because you're not like the others. You ask questions. You don't look away." She picked up the drive, the weight of it far heavier than plastic and metal. Evidence. The first real piece of it. But Chen wasn't finished. "Be careful, Captain. Harrington isn't just a man with a program. He has backing. Political, corporate. This isn't rogue ambition. It's institutional." "Blackstone Defense," Elena whispered, remembering a name Ryan had scrawled in his letter. Chen nodded. "They supply the pharmaceuticals, experimental compounds, drugs that suppress empathy, amplify aggression. In the lab they call them enhancements. In reality they strip away what makes soldiers human." Elena felt the air leave her lungs, and Harrington calls that strength. Chen's lips tightened. He believes conscience is a weakness, that hesitation costs lives, that morality has no place on the battlefield. She closed her hand around the drive. "Then he's wrong." Chen looked at her for a long time. "Perhaps, but remember, truth is heavy. The moment you carry it, you become a target." She left not long after, the flash drive burning a hole in her pocket. The night air was sharper now, cutting against her skin as if reminding her of the weight of her choice. She could still walk away, pretend none of this was hers to carry, pretend Harrington's sins weren't her responsibility. But Ryan's words haunted her. Don't let them bury me as weak. The next day, she drove back onto base. Her badge cleared faster this time, too fast. The guard barely glanced at her before waving her through. Her instinct screamed. Something was shifting, Harrington knew. She forced herself to keep her pace steady as she crossed the yard, heading for the hangar where she kept her personal effects. But halfway across, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Captain Ramirez." She turned. Harrington stood by the steps of headquarters, hands clasped behind his back, his smile as cold as ever. "A word." Soldiers moved around them, but somehow the space between her and Harrington felt like an island. He waited until she stood before him, then leaned closer. "I hear you've been curious." His tone was almost casual, but the edge beneath it was razor-sharp. "Speaking with people you shouldn't, asking questions that don't belong to your rank." Elena kept her face neutral. "With respect, sir, I'm simply fulfilling my duties." His smile widened. "Your duties are what I say they are." He leaned even closer, his breath hot against her ear. "Curiosity is a dangerous habit, Captain. It can drown you, quickly." Her fists tightened at her sides, but she forced her voice steady. "Permission to return to my duties, sir." He studied her for a long, suffocating moment. Then he nodded, dismissed. She walked away, every nerve in her body electric. She could feel his gaze burning into her back until she disappeared into the hangar. Inside, she exhaled, finally letting the tension bleed from her chest. She slid the flash drive into a hidden pocket inside her boot. If Harrington suspected, when Harrington suspected, she'd need to be ready. That night, as the base quieted and the training fields lay in darkness, she met someone who might change everything. Captain Marcus Walker. He was younger than her, maybe late 20s. Ranger tab, combat patches, the kind of soldier who had seen too much too soon. He approached her carefully at the officers' club, sitting down across from her without asking. "Sir," he said loudly enough for others to hear. Then softer, "Ma'am, with respect. I know why you're here." Her heart kicked. "And why is that?" He leaned in. "Because something's wrong with AWIP, and because Ryan Cooper didn't kill himself." Her breath caught. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of something unexpected. Not fear, not anger. Hope. Why had he chosen her? Elena studied Captain Marcus Walker across the dim light of the officers' club. His uniform was immaculate, his posture military perfect, but his eyes betrayed him. They carried the weight of something unspeakable, something that had hollowed him out. He stirred his drink slowly, buying time before speaking again. "I've lost 4 men, ma'am, all to AWIP, 2 suicides, 1 psychiatric discharge, 1 disappeared." Her pulse quickened. "Disappeared." He nodded, voice low. "Transferred, they said, special assignment, but his records vanished. It's like he was erased. Name still on the roster, but no postings, no forwarding unit, nothing, just gone." Elena's hand tightened around her glass. "Ryan Cooper." Walker's jaw worked as he swallowed. He was one of them. He completed AWIP 3 weeks ago, then transferred. I saw him once after. He looked hollow, like something had been cut out of him. The words struck deep. She remembered Ryan's eyes in the mess hall, pleading silently for help. Hollow, yes, she'd seen it too. 2 days before his death, Walker continued, he came to me, said he needed to talk. He mentioned something called the final phase, said it was a point of no return. But before he could explain, Harrington's aide appeared, steered him away. Walker's voice broke for just a second. That was the last time. Elena exhaled slowly, forcing herself to keep steady. "You understand the risk telling me this." "Risk doesn't matter," Walker said, eyes burning now. "I joined to protect soldiers, not watch them be turned into whatever this is." The silence between them was heavy, charged. Then Walker leaned closer. "If you're serious about finding the truth, there's a place you need to see. Building 237, behavioral adjustment." Her chest tightened. "What happens there?" Walker looked away as if even speaking the words might summon it. "They go in one way. They come out different, detached, compliant. I've seen men I trusted with my life turn into strangers overnight." Elena's throat went dry. She remembered Ryan whispering there inside my head, "I don't know what's mine anymore." "Where is it?" she asked. Walker hesitated, then scribbled something on a napkin: guard rotations, entrance points, a crude layout. He slid it across the table, then stood abruptly, his public face returning. "Thank you for your time, ma'am," he said loudly, saluting before walking away. To anyone watching, it looked like a brief, ordinary exchange, but Elena's hands trembled as she folded the napkin into her pocket. That night she sat alone in her quarters, staring at the map. Walker had given her a key, but using it meant stepping into open defiance. Harrington would come for her if she was caught. Her thoughts turned to Ryan, to the young soldiers who followed orders because they believed the system cared about them, to the faces on the memorial wall. She whispered to herself, "No more silence." The next evening, Elena moved carefully. She spent the day maintaining a facade, training with her unit, attending briefings, even exchanging brief, polite words with Harrington. But inside, every nerve screamed with urgency. At 2200 hours, she slipped from her quarters, blending into the shadows. The base was alive but subdued: night patrols, hum of generators, distant echoes of boots on pavement. She walked with purpose, head high, but angled herself into the darker paths, moving toward Building 237. The structure looked ordinary. Concrete, unmarked, 2 guards at the main entrance. Nothing to suggest the horrors inside. But Walker's napkin told her the truth. A restricted wing below ground. Behavioral adjustment. She approached from the southwest, where Walker had marked a maintenance door. Her pulse thundered as she swiped the access card he'd provided. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked green. The hallway inside was dim, lit by emergency strips along the floor. She moved silently, her boots making no sound against the concrete. Every breath felt too loud. At the end of the corridor, she found the utility room. Just as Walker had described, a maintenance shaft behind a false panel. She pushed it open, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. Her throat tightened. She gripped the rungs, beginning her descent. The air grew colder the deeper she went. Each step echoed like judgment. At the bottom, she emerged into another hallway, this one different, brighter, sterile. The air smelled of disinfectant and something sharper, chemical, metallic. She crept toward a set of double doors. Voices drifted through. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. Subject resisted during the last session. A clinical voice detached. Harrington's voice followed, colder than steel. Then increased the dosage. The Ares protocol demands absolute compliance. Elena's breath caught. Ares. Ryan had written that word. She risked a glance through the window in the door. What she saw turned her stomach. A soldier strapped to a chair, electrodes covering his scalp, an IV dripping pale blue liquid into his arm. Around him, technicians adjusted machines that pulsed with strange, rhythmic patterns. On the screen above, jagged lines of brainwaves shifted with each electric pulse. The soldier's eyes were wide, darting frantically, but his mouth barely moved. His voice, when it came, was hoarse, broken. "Please stop." Harrington stood nearby, arms crossed, watching with satisfaction. Elena pressed a hand against the cold glass, bile rising in her throat. She pulled her phone, snapping covert images, recording what she could. Evidence. Proof. But it wasn't enough, not yet. She backed away, heart pounding, retracing her steps to the shaft. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to leave, to survive. but she forced herself calm. She had what she needed. She just had to get out. Halfway up the ladder, the alarm blared. Her stomach dropped. Red lights flashed, sirens echoing through the shaft. A voice over the intercom, "Security breach, southwest corridor, seal exits immediately." Her breath came sharp and shallow. They knew. Somehow they knew. She climbed faster, every muscle burning. At the top, she shoved the panel open, tumbling into the utility room. Boots thundered down the corridor outside. Voices shouted. She pressed herself flat against the wall, silent, waiting. The guards stormed past, moving toward the main shaft. She slipped out behind them, moving the opposite direction, her body on autopilot. She didn't breathe until she was outside, the night air hitting her like a wave. She kept walking, steady, forcing herself not to run. Only when she reached the shadow of the motor pool did she allow herself to stop, collapsing against the cold metal of a truck. Her phone was still in her hand, the images recorded, proof of what Harrington was doing. But proof meant nothing if she didn't survive long enough to share it. A sound behind her made her spin. A shadow stepped forward. "Captain," a voice whispered. It was Walker, his face pale, eyes darting nervously. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. She nodded, her voice breaking. "God help us, I saw everything." Walker's jaw tightened. "Then you understand, we can't stop this alone." Elena looked down at the phone in her hand. Ryan's letter still folded in her pocket. Chen's flash drive tucked safely in her boot. She lifted her gaze, steady now. "Then we don't stop it alone." Why did the silence feel heavier than the alarms? Hours had passed since Elena slipped out of building 237, yet the shriek of the siren still lived in her ears. She showered, scrubbed her skin until it was raw, but the smell of antiseptic and chemicals clung to her. When she closed her eyes, she still saw the soldier strapped to that chair, eyes wide, pleading. Sleep was out of the question. She sat on her bunk, the dim light from the barracks window spilling across her desk. Ryan's letter lay open again, creased and worn from too many readings. The words blurred, but one line cut sharper each time. "Don't let them bury me as weak." A knock at the door startled her. Sharp, 2 beats then 1, she knew the rhythm. Walker. She opened the door cautiously. He slipped in, shutting it quickly behind him. His face was pale, lips pressed tight. "They know," he said flatly. Her stomach sank. "How much?" "Enough to watch you. Harrington had surveillance on the southwest sector tonight. He won't have your face, but he'll suspect." Walker glanced at her desk, at the letter. His voice softened. "You saw it, didn't you? The reprogramming." Elena nodded slowly. "It's worse than I imagined." Walker ran a hand over his face, looking older than his years. "Then we have a choice. We can wait and hope someone above Harrington steps in, or we do something ourselves." Elena looked at him sharply. "And end up like Ryan, like the others." "Maybe," Walker admitted. "But if we stay silent, this spreads. Unit 45's already operational. They're deploying in days." Her pulse quickened. Unit 45. Ryan had whispered about it just before he unraveled. She leaned forward. "What do you know?" Walker hesitated, then lowered his voice. "It's not training. It's deployment outside normal rules of engagement. Black ops. No oversight, no accountability. Once they pass the final phase, they're ghosts. I've heard whispers of missions, raids where civilian casualties were written off as collateral, missions not even General Maxwell sees." Elena's breath caught, and Ryan was headed there. Walker nodded grimly, until he broke. The silence stretched. Both of them knew the weight of the choice before them. Both knew it wasn't just about one soldier anymore. It was about stopping something that could poison everything they'd ever sworn to protect. Finally, Elena spoke. "We'll need more than whispers, more than what I saw. We need undeniable evidence, and someone alive to testify." Walker met her eyes. "Specialist Ramirez." Elena frowned. "The one Harrington pulled from the training exercise." Walker nodded. He was in Ryan's cohort. He's been showing resistance, hesitating in drills, questioning orders. Harrington has him marked for extended adjustment, if we reach him before that. Elena's heart pounded. He could confirm everything. Walker's jaw tightened. But Harrington's already circling. If Ramirez talks, he won't survive long. They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with the knowledge of what they were planning. Elena finally stood, her voice steady. Then we get to him before Harrington does. The next morning she kept her routine. Training, briefings, meals. Every move calculated, deliberate. To anyone watching, she was just another officer carrying out her duties. But she felt the eyes, Harrington's eyes. He found her in the hallway after lunch, his smile sharp as ever. "Captain Ramirez, I trust you're settling into the new training schedule." "Yes, sir," she said evenly. His gaze lingered, too long, too knowing. "I hear you've taken an interest in Specialist Ramirez." Her chest tightened. "He's in my unit, sir. I look after my soldiers." "Of course." Harrington's smile didn't falter. "Just remember, some soldiers aren't worth saving." Dismissed. The words clung to her as she walked away. Not worth saving. She thought of Ryan, of the boy who'd once asked her if the nightmares ever stopped. He had been worth saving. They all were. That night Walker slipped her a folded paper under the table at the officers' club. Inside, schedules, guard rotations, Ramirez's behavioral adjustment session, scheduled for 2,300 hours. Elena met Walker's eyes across the table. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. At 22:30, she moved through the shadows outside Building 237. The air was cold, damp with mist. Walker trailed 2 minutes behind, entering through a different route. They'd planned it carefully: divide, converge, extract. Elena slipped inside through a side corridor. Her heart pounded as she crept past dim-lit rooms. The hum of machines grew louder, sharper, until she reached the double doors of the adjustment chamber. Through the window she saw him. Specialist Ramirez, strapped to the same chair she'd seen the night before, electrodes on his head, IV in his arm, fear in his eyes. Harrington wasn't there this time, just technicians preparing their instruments. Elena's hand trembled on the door handle. She could rush in, try to free him, but without Walker, without timing, it was suicide. She pulled back, pressing into the shadows. Walker's figure appeared at the far end of the corridor, nodding once. Together they burst through the doors. "Step away from him," Elena barked, her voice carrying the command of rank. The technicians froze, eyes wide. Walker moved fast, pulling the IV line from Ramirez's arm, unbuckling the restraints. Elena kept her weapon trained. "This soldier is under my authority. Any interference will be treated as obstruction of command." For a terrifying moment, no one moved. Then slowly the technicians backed away. Ramirez's voice was weak, hoarse. "Ma'am, they tried to." "I know," Elena said quickly. "You're safe now." But before they could move, the intercom crackled. Harrington's voice filled the room, cold and cutting. "Impressive, Captain. Very bold but reckless." The technicians bolted, leaving the room empty except for them. The alarms blared again, red lights flashing. Walker cursed under his breath, hauling Ramirez to his feet. "We're out of time." They half-carried him down the corridor, Elena leading. The sound of boots thundered in the distance, guards converging. They rounded a corner, burst into the maintenance shaft. Elena shoved Ramirez toward the ladder. "Climb." He hesitated, weak. Walker pushed from below. "Go." They scrambled up, hearts hammering, alarms screaming. At the top, Elena shoved the panel open, pulling Ramirez through. Walker followed, slamming it shut just as the first boots clanged on the rungs below. They ran, out the side door, into the night. The cold air burned Elena's lungs as they sprinted across the yard, dragging Ramirez between them. Searchlights swept the grounds, shouts echoed. The base was alive, hunting them. They ducked into the shadow of the motor pool, collapsing behind a row of trucks. Ramirez gasped for air, his body shaking. They put things in us, he stammered. Drugs, voices in my head, orders that weren't mine. I tried to fight, but tears welled in his eyes. Ryan tried too. He said he couldn't tell what was real anymore. That's why his voice broke. Elena's chest ached. She gripped his shoulder firmly. You're not alone, not anymore. Walker leaned close, voice urgent. We can't stay here. They'll lock down the base. Elena nodded, pulling the flash drive from her boot. We get this evidence out, tonight. Ramirez looked between them, eyes wide with fear. They'll kill us. Maybe, Elena said softly, but silence will kill more. The night swallowed their words. Somewhere across the base, Harrington was already moving his pieces, tightening his noose. But for the first time, Elena wasn't alone. She had allies, she had evidence. And she had a choice. To run or to fight. She closed her hand around Ryan's letter, whispering to herself, not weak, never weak. And with that, the mission truly began. Why hadn't General Maxwell returned her call? Elena sat in the comms room, the secure line buzzing in her ear, but the other end stayed silent. Twice now she'd tried reaching him. Twice the aide had said he was unavailable. The second time, the aide didn't even bother masking the edge in his voice. Unavailable, the word cut like dismissal. She hung up, staring at the handset as if it might confess something. Maxwell had always been the steady one, the man who saw her potential when others ignored it. He wasn't blind to Harrington's ambition. He'd warned her once, be careful, Captain. He plays for power, not principle. But that was months ago. And now, when she had evidence, when she needed him most, silence. Her gut churned. Either Maxwell was choosing not to see, or someone had already reached him first. The door creaked. Walker slipped in, Ramirez closed behind. The young specialist looked worse today, skin pale, eyes red, body trembling as though his veins still carried the residue of whatever they'd pumped into him. Elena motioned them to sit, lowering her voice. We can't trust the chain of command. Harrington's reach goes higher than we thought. Walker leaned forward, jaw tight. Then we go outside it, media, civilian oversight, someone who can't be silenced. Easier said than done, Elena muttered. We're under surveillance. Every call, every email is flagged. They'll bury the truth before it leaves the base. Ramirez's voice cracked. They'll bury me. His eyes darted toward the door. Harrington knows I'm talking to you. I can feel it. They'll come for me. Elena's chest ached. She reached across the table, steadying his trembling hands. You're not alone anymore. That's what he wants you to believe, that you're isolated. But we stand together now. That's how we fight. His eyes shimmered with tears, but he nodded faintly. Walker exhaled, running a hand through his hair. So what's the play? Elena pulled the flash drive from her boot, setting it on the table. This, Chen's records, combined with the footage I captured and Ramirez's testimony, it's enough to break this wide open. We just need a way off base. Walker shook his head. They've tightened lockdown since last night. Every exit checkpoint has enhanced scans. Anything digital gets intercepted, even drives. Elena tapped the table, thinking. Options spiraled and collapsed. Every route felt like a trap, until... The training flight, she whispered. Walker frowned. What training flight? Tomorrow's airframe exercise, Elena said, eyes sharpening. I'm scheduled to fly a test sortie. Harrington's people will assume it's routine. If I carry the drive out physically, stash it in the nav logs, I can deliver it directly to an external contact. Walker's brow furrowed. Risky, they'll track every move. Everything is risky, Elena said quietly, but I can fly under their radar, literally. Ramirez's voice was small. And if you don't come back? Elena held his gaze. Then you both continue, the truth survives, one way or another. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken promises. That night, Elena walked the perimeter of the base, her boots crunching softly against gravel. The floodlights cast long shadows, the barbed wire gleamed under the moon. She felt the eyes of sentries following her. Harrington's shadow stretched across every inch of ground. As she passed the memorial wall, she stopped. Ryan's face stared back at her, forever frozen in that photograph. She whispered, "We're not done, Ryan, I promise you that." Behind her, a voice cut through the night, smooth, familiar. "Talking to ghosts, Captain." She turned slowly. Harrington stood just beyond the light, hands clasped behind his back, that same smile etched across his face. "Strange habit," he mused. "Shows weakness of mind, attachment to the past." Elena forced her voice steady. "Respectfully, sir, remembering the dead is part of honoring the uniform." Harrington's smile deepened, but his eyes hardened. "The uniform demands the living, not sentimental indulgence. Remember that." They stood in silence, locked in a battle of wills. Then he leaned closer, his whisper cutting. "Tomorrow's flight, you'll report directly to me afterward. Debrief in my office. Don't be late." Her pulse spiked, he knew or suspected. "Yes, sir," she said, her face blank. He nodded once and walked away, his shadow stretching long behind him. Elena's hands clenched at her sides. Every instinct screamed to abandon the plan. But abandoning it meant Ryan's letter stayed buried. Ramirez's voice stayed silenced. And Harrington's machine rolled on. No, the risk was the point. The next morning she stood on the tarmac, flight suit zipped, helmet under her arm. The sky stretched pale and endless above her. The jet waited, sleek and silent, a vessel of escape and danger both. Walker approached, keeping his voice low. "You sure about this?" Elena met his gaze. "Not at all, but it's what we have." He slipped a folded note into her hand. "Coordinates, contact in D.C. A journalist, trusted. If you get through, give her everything." She tucked it into her suit, nodding once. Ramirez limped closer, his face drawn but resolute. "Ma'am, thank you for not leaving us behind." Her throat tightened, she gripped his shoulder. "Stay strong, don't let him break you." The engines roared to life, drowning further words. Elena climbed the ladder, strapping into the cockpit. The canopy lowered with a hiss, sealing her inside. As the jet taxied forward, she caught a glimpse of Harrington on the observation deck. Hands clasped, smile fixed. Watching, always watching. Her gut twisted. This wasn't just a flight, it was a test. His test. Tower cleared her for takeoff. She pushed the throttle, the jet surging down the runway. Her body pressed into the seat, the ground falling away. For a moment, there was only sky. But inside her suit, pressed against her chest, the drive burned like a secret heartbeat. And below, Harrington waited, his trap tightening. Why were the instruments lying to her? Elena glanced at the altimeter, steady at 25,000 feet. Yet her gut told her otherwise. The jet felt sluggish, heavy, as though something unseen pulled against it. Her comm crackled. "Falcon 1, you are drifting 5 degrees off course. Adjust heading." She frowned. The tower's voice was calm, but something in the cadence felt wrong, too rehearsed, too controlled. Her fingers hovered over the controls, but she didn't correct. Instead, she studied the terrain below, vast fields broken by a winding river. The heading was fine, the instruments fine. The voice was the problem. Her stomach tightened. Harrington. He was inside the system, guiding her flight, testing her obedience. "Falcon 1, confirm adjustment," the voice repeated, sharper now. Elena's pulse quickened. If she followed, she'd be steered into his trap. If she refused, she'd reveal she knew. Her father's words echoed. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She flipped the comm to static, severing the link. Silence filled her helmet, broken only by the roar of the engines. But silence was its own kind of alarm. Within minutes, 2 blips appeared on her radar, interceptors closing fast. Her breath caught, This wasn't a training exercise anymore. This was containment. The jets appeared in her periphery, sleek and menacing, flanking her on both sides. Their wingtips flashed a command signal: return to base. Elena's throat tightened. She had seconds to decide: obey and lose everything, or defy and risk never landing alive. Her hand brushed the folded note Walker had slipped her. The journalist, the coordinates, a path beyond Harrington's reach. She pressed the throttle. The jet roared forward, banking hard. The interceptors followed instantly, engines screaming. The chase began. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she dove low, skimming the tree line. Warning alarms blared, the aircraft shuddering under the strain. She pushed harder, forcing the jet into maneuvers that would test even the most seasoned pilots. Missile locks chirped, threat indicators screamed. Elena gritted her teeth. Not yet. Hold. At the last second, she cut the throttle, rolled hard, and dropped beneath the cover of the river valley. The pursuing jets overshot, streaking past like arrows. She seized the moment, throttling back up, banking north. Her heart pounded. She'd bought seconds, no more. But sometimes seconds were enough. She opened a hidden compartment in the cockpit, sliding the flash drive inside a sealed nav log case. Even if the jet went down, if someone found the wreckage, the truth might survive. Her eyes burned as she whispered, "Ryan, forgive me if I fail." The comm crackled alive again, this time with Harrington's voice. Smooth, calm, deadly. "Impressive flying, Captain, but futile. Do you really think you can outrun the system?" Elena's hands trembled on the controls. She didn't respond. "Your father resisted once," Harrington continued. "You remember, don't you? His hesitation, his weakness. It cost him his life." Her chest constricted. He was inside her history now, cutting at wounds she never spoke aloud. Harrington's tone sharpened. "The same weakness runs through you: attachment, conscience. That's why you'll never win." Elena's vision blurred with fury. She slammed the comm off, her breath ragged. The interceptors circled back, locking in. This time there would be no escape. She knew the truth now. The flight was never about training. It was a stage, a trap designed not to test her skills but her obedience. And she had failed his test. The radar screamed, 2 missile locks, no more time. She whispered, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak." Then the world erupted in fire. The jet spiraled, alarms shrieking, flames licking across the fuselage. Elena fought the controls, but the aircraft bucked violently, spinning toward the ground. Her hand slammed the eject lever. The canopy exploded, the force ripping her from the seat. The parachute deployed with a violent jolt, the world spinning around her in streaks of smoke and flame. She hit the ground hard, rolling across dirt and brush until her body finally stilled. Pain screamed through her ribs, her leg, her arms, but she was alive. Barely. Her chute dragged in the wind until she cut it free, crawling toward cover. Smoke from the wreckage curled into the sky not far away. Within minutes, the distant thrum of helicopters filled the air. Search teams, Harrington's hounds. Elena pressed herself into the earth, every nerve on fire. She still had the note, the coordinates. The mission wasn't over, not yet. But on the base, things were unraveling just as quickly. Walker sat in the officers' club, forcing himself to sip coffee while his mind raced. The news had already spread. Ramirez's flight lost contact, presumed down. The official story would be mechanical failure. But he knew better. Ramirez sat across from him, eyes wide, pale as a ghost. "They killed her, didn't they?" Walker clenched his jaw. "If she's gone, we carry it forward. Evidence, testimony, everything." But before he could say more, Harrington entered the room. Silence followed him, heavy as smoke. He scanned the room once, his eyes falling on Walker and Ramirez. That smile spread slowly. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "a tragic day. Captain Ramirez's aircraft failed mid-flight. Such losses remind us of the price of service. Ramirez's hands trembled on his cup. Harrington noticed. His smile deepened. "Specialist Ramirez," he said, voice like a blade, "report to my office. Immediately." The young soldier's eyes flicked to Walker, pleading. Walker gave the faintest nod. "Hold steady." Ramirez stood, his legs unsteady, and followed Harrington out. Walker's gut twisted. He knew what awaited: extended adjustment, breaking, erasure. Unless Elena was still alive. Somewhere in the darkness, bleeding, hunted, but alive. Why hadn't the pain killed her yet? Elena lay in the underbrush, every breath a dagger in her ribs. The crash site burned in the distance, black smoke rising like a flare calling her pursuers. Her leg throbbed where the chute cords had twisted in the fall, but it held her weight enough to move, slow, limping steps. She pressed a hand against her chest. The note from Walker was still there, damp with sweat but intact. The drive, hidden in the nav log, was gone with the wreckage. Still, if she reached the coordinates, she could tell the story herself. Flesh and voice carried weight data couldn't. Helicopters roared closer. Searchlights swept the trees. Harrington wouldn't send grunts for this. He'd send hunters. Men shaped by his program. Men like the ones she'd seen hollowed out in Building 237. Her pulse hammered. She staggered deeper into the trees, each branch scraping against her skin. The darkness swallowed her whole, but the fear kept her awake, alive. In her mind, Ryan's voice whispered again, "They're inside my head. I don't know what's mine anymore." She pressed forward, whispering back, "It's still yours, Ryan. It always was." On base, Ramirez sat rigid in Harrington's office, hands clenched so tight his knuckles whitened. The colonel leaned back in his chair, the picture of calm authority. "Specialist," Harrington said smoothly, "do you know why you're here?" Ramirez swallowed hard. "No, sir." A faint smile. "Of course you do. You've been resisting, doubting, questioning orders. That is weakness." Ramirez's voice cracked. "I'm just trying to serve, sir." "Serve?" Harrington leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "Service means obedience. No hesitation, no conscience, but you cling to both. And it shows." Ramirez's throat tightened. His mind screamed to stay silent, but words spilled anyway. "What you're doing, it's wrong. Ryan." Ryan was weak, Harrington snapped, the first crack in his polished calm. "He chose hesitation. He chose death." Ramirez's chest heaved. "No, sir," he fought, he tried. Harrington stood slowly, circling the desk. His voice lowered, dangerous. "You think courage lies in defiance. No, courage is surrender. Courage is erasing the self, becoming the weapon this nation needs. And you will learn that, specialist, one way or another." He pressed a button. 2 guards entered, their faces expressionless. "Take him to adjustment, extended cycle." Ramirez's eyes widened, terror flooding his veins. He struggled as the guards seized his arms, but their grips were iron. "Sir, please," his voice broke. "I don't want to forget." The door slammed behind them, his cries echoing down the hall. Walker watched from the corridor, every muscle tight. He followed discreetly, his gut telling him this was the moment. He heard Ramirez's voice fatting, the sound drilling into his chest like shrapnel. He could do nothing. Not here, not yet. To intervene now would mean both their lives crushed instantly. Still, he whispered under his breath, "Hold on, kid, just hold on." Back in the forest, Elena collapsed against a fallen log, chest heaving. She tore a strip of fabric from her flight suit, binding her bleeding leg. Every sound in the night sharpened, the snap of twigs, the hum of rotor blades, the distant bark of orders. She closed her eyes, focusing. Panic wouldn't save her. Breath would, steady. In, out. She survived worse. Ambushes, firefights, nights alone in deserts where the stars felt like eyes. She could survive this too. A branch snapped nearby. She froze. A silhouette moved between the trees. Broad shoulders, precise stride. Not a searchlight sweep, this was closer, personal. She drew her sidearm, hand shaking. Her breath caught as the figure emerged. Walker! He crouched quickly beside her, eyes scanning the tree line. You're alive, he breathed. Barely, she rasped. How? No time. Harrington's got Ramirez. They've dragged him to adjustment. His voice was urgent, fierce. We have to move now. Elena's gut clenched. Ramirez, the boy barely holding on, the boy who'd begged not to forget. Her mind spun. She could push toward the coordinates, try to reach the journalist, expose everything. Or she could turn back, risk it all for Ramirez. Her father's voice whispered again. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She looked Walker dead in the eye. Then we act. They moved through the night, her limp slowing them but not stopping them. Every shadow felt alive, every rustle a threat, but the fire in her chest burned hotter than fear. On base, Ramirez was strapped to the chair. Electrodes tightened against his scalp. The pale blue liquid slid into his veins. His body convulsed, eyes rolling back. Technicians murmured, adjusting dials. Subject resisting, increase frequency. Ramirez screamed. His memories fractured, his mother's face, Ryan's laugh, the sound of boots on gravel, all shattered by waves of searing light. Harrington stood in the observation window, arms crossed, watching coldly. Break him. Ramirez's voice tore the room open. Don't take it, don't take me. The machines pulsed brighter. His scream cut into silence. Walker and Elena slipped through the outer fence, the darkness cloaking their approach. The alarms from the crash still echoed across the base, drawing most security outward. But here, near the heart of the beast, it was quieter. Too quiet. They reached the maintenance shaft. Elena's ribs screamed as she lowered herself down, but she forced the pain aside. Walker followed, their boots landing soft on concrete. The hall glowed sterile and cruel. The same scent, bleach and metal, humanity erased. Voices ahead, Ramirez's scream sharp, raw. Elena's chest clenched. She moved faster, Walker on her heels. They reached the observation window. Inside, Ramirez writhed, his face twisted in agony, his eyes flickering between recognition and vacancy. Walker cursed under his breath. We're out of time. Elena's hand pressed against the glass. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She saw Ryan in that chair, saw every soldier Harrington had broken. Her decision hardened like steel. She whispered, we end this, tonight. Why did time slow when courage demanded speed? Elena's hand lingered against the observation glass, her breath fogging the surface. On the other side, Specialist Ramirez convulsed, strapped to the chair, the pale blue poison dripping into his veins. His cries ripped through her like shrapnel. Walker's hand gripped her shoulder, urgent. We have seconds. If we wait, he's gone. Elena drew her pistol, her body trembling but steady enough. With one sharp motion, she fired into the lock. Glass shattered, alarms shrieked, and the sterile chamber exploded with chaos. Technicians scrambled back, shielding their faces. Walker rushed forward, yanking electrodes from Ramirez's scalp. Elena tore the IV from his arm, her hands slick with blood. Ramirez gasped, eyes wild, voice broken. I can't tell what's mine. Elena gripped his face, forcing his gaze into hers. This is yours, right here, hold on. Walker freed the restraints. Together they hauled him up, his body weak but fighting. They stumbled toward the exit, only to find Harrington waiting. He filled the doorway like judgment itself, flanked by two armed guards. His smile was razor-thin. Predictable, he murmured. Elena raised her weapon. Step aside. Harrington chuckled. Captain Ramirez, always mistaking defiance for strength. His gaze flicked to the young specialist, trembling between them. He's already broken. You can't save him. You can't save any of them. Elena's voice shook, but the steel beneath it held. You're wrong. Strength isn't obedience. It's refusing to let fear own you. Harrington's eyes hardened. He nodded once. The guards raised their rifles. Walker fired first. The corridor erupted, flashes of light, echoes of thunder. One guard dropped. Elena shoved Ramirez to cover, returning fire. Her ribs screamed, but adrenaline carried her. The second guard staggered, fell. Smoke hung heavy. Silence returned, except for Ramirez's ragged breaths. Only Harrington remained, calm, smiling. "You think this changes anything?" he asked softly. "The program is bigger than me, bigger than you. You kill me, another will take my place. The machine grinds on." Elena stepped closer, pistol steady on him. Every memory of Ryan, every whisper of the broken, every photograph on the memorial wall surged inside her. "Maybe," she said, "but machines don't fear, and fear is what keeps men like you awake at night." For the first time, Harrington's smile faltered. But Elena didn't fire. She lowered the weapon, eyes burning. "You'll answer for this, not with a bullet, with the truth." Walker moved quickly, cuffing him with the fallen guard's restraints. Harrington didn't resist. He simply watched Elena, that thin smile returning. "Truth is fragile, Captain. It bends, it breaks, and no one listens until it's too late." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make them listen." They moved fast, dragging Ramirez between them, Harrington bound behind. The corridors echoed with distant alarms, security converging. But they forced their way upward, step by painful step, until the night air hit their lungs again. Searchlights swept the grounds. Helicopters thundered overhead. Walker cursed, "We'll never clear the fence." Elena's mind raced. The crash site, the wreckage, the nav log, if it survived, if anyone found it, proof might still exist, but she couldn't count on maybes. She reached into her suit, pulling out the folded note. The journalist's coordinates, a name, a lifeline. She shoved it into Walker's hand. "If I don't make it," she said, "you get this out, promise me." Walker's jaw clenched. "Don't talk like that." "Promise me." His eyes met hers, fierce, reluctant. "I promise." The sound of boots closed in. They had seconds. Elena pulled Ramirez close, whispering, "Stay with me. You're more than what they did to you. Don't let them take that." His tear-streaked face lifted, and for the briefest moment she saw clarity in his eyes. A flicker of the boy who once believed in the uniform. They moved again into the shadows toward the perimeter. Shots cracked behind them, sparks bursting against steel. Walker fired back, dragging Ramirez with him. Elena covered their flank, every bullet deliberate. The fence loomed ahead, its barbed coils glinting under the searchlights. Walker shoved Ramirez forward, boosting him up. Elena fired until her weapon clicked empty, then threw herself against the fence, hauling herself after them. The barbs tore her hands, her uniform, but she climbed, pain fueling each movement. They tumbled over the other side, collapsing into the dirt. The shouts behind the fence grew distant, muffled by the roar of helicopters moving the other direction. The search was still focused on the crash site. For the first time that night, they had a sliver of space. Hours later, they huddled in an abandoned farmhouse miles from the base. Ramirez slept fitfully, his body twitching with phantom shocks. Walker stood watch at the window, rifle steady. Elena sat against the wall, exhaustion weighing heavy, but her mind refused rest. Harrington's words echoed still. "The machine grinds on." Maybe he was right. Maybe it wouldn't end here. But Ryan's face on the memorial wall rose before her eyes, and she remembered the promise she whispered. "You deserved better." She pulled the folded letter from her pocket again, Ryan's handwriting shaky but clear. "Don't let them bury me as weak." Tears welled, burning her vision. She whispered, "You weren't weak, Ryan. You were the bravest of us all." Walker glanced back, his voice low. "What now?" Elena's gaze hardened. "Now we carry the truth, even if it kills us." The farmhouse fell quiet, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down. Outside, dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in pale fire. Another day, another chance to fight. And though the machine still ground on, though Harrington's shadow still stretched long, Elena knew one thing with unshakable certainty. Strength wasn't in obedience. Strength was in remembering, in resisting, in choosing dignity when silence would be easier. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.